right, hello. We are excited to have you with us tonight. To kick off tonight, we have parents who were once in your shoes that want to share their stories. Some of them have recently joined our Be Well family, and some have been with us for years.
First, we have Trudy. Trudy and her son Joseph have been seeing us for quite some time. Consistent chiropractic care has been such a blessing to them, and so here's Trudy to tell you why.
So this is my son Joseph. He's going to be 18. Darn it! This next month, December 21st. Joseph didn't speak in full sentences until he was 4. He is the baby of 6 kids, so we just thought, everybody's talking for him. Because they always did, and they still do. We used to call him Mr. Stoneface because he had serious lack of expression. We just pass it off. He's just being shy. Again, he's the youngest of 6 kids. One of my friends who had a son with Asperger's and autism said to me one day, we were just at church, and he's just standing there, and all the kids are running around him, and she pats the chair next to her. And so I went and sat down. She says, I really think you need to have your son evaluated. I think he's autistic. And I was like, you're autistic. It's like, you need to be evaluated, not my son. Anyway, I was a little bit defensive, and I had other people, ask me, what's the deal with Joseph? And so he kind of broke out of his shell over the next few years, and by the time he was 8, talking incessantly. And I don't know if I can't see who's in the room. So anybody who knows him, well, Tina knows him from swimming, about Legos, about anything that he was interested in. He would could tell you everything about the Civil War. He could tell you everything about Legos that there was to know at that time. And so again, we were just like, he's just an overexcited 8-year-old. Everybody gets mislabeled all the time. Fast forward to age 14, we had moved from Wasilla to a little village out in Bristol Bay. And day 1, he went from being a kid who would talk incessantly to a teenager that couldn't even tell me what he wanted for lunch. Day 1. A year prior, he'd had moments like this, but they were few and far between, and we just thought, teenagehood. Also, although we found out later, autism and puberty. Oh, my Lord. Yeah, some of you know what I'm talking about. So he began to have multiple nonverbal moments like this every single day. He would have full body spasms. He would totally stutter. He couldn't even get out the word I without stuttering multiple times. And we got to where he couldn't even speak. We would hand him his phone and tell him to text us what he was trying to say. In the middle of all this, he had broken one of his collarbones. And we had the surgery to repair it, and then the surgery to remove the hardware. 14 months later, after moving to the village, we realized we needed to get him out. He needed to be back in town to where we could get him some real help. The second surgery, when he went to have the hardware removed, was the first time he started having psychosis, and I thought, I'm going to have to admit my son to mental care. I don't know what's going on with him. We made an appointment with Josh there right after that, and we had seen him before we left for the village with one of our other kids who had debilitating chronic pain and remembered how successful that was. She went from not leaving the house most of the time, and sometimes not even her room, to going outside and walking around and goofing off with her siblings and getting out and doing things. So we had seen that success with her in just a few months visits with Josh. And so we were like, okay, I'm gonna make an appointment for him. He had been physically rigid for about a year, and we thought it was just all this stuff, him, anxiety, all the, teenage awkwardness. We thought it was just part of all of that. We came in for our first appointment. He popped up off the table, and going into this appointment, he's not talking. He is completely sullen, and, Josh is like, tell me something good, and he goes, it just, nothing comes out. He's just just stuttering. He pops up off the table and goes, oh, wow, I can move my head. And in a full sentence, Like I hadn't heard him speak in a full comprehensible sentence in months. And unless he was at home with the family or with friends, but not out in public in a room full of strangers, there were other people sitting there, and I was totally floored. I couldn't believe that he said something out loud. And then we get in the car, and he talks all the way home about how much better he felt. And I was just like, my jaw, I think, was dragging behind the truck. He was officially diagnosed with autism, ADHD, attentiveness, and generalized anxiety disorder, which the doctor was like, this is most likely because of his situation he's in. He's aware enough that, he knows there's a problem, and he, doesn't quite know what to do with himself. He would be go in for his visit with Josh, and he would have I'd be like, fair warning, he is not doing good today, so I don't know what's going to happen. And he'd be like, what's wrong with him? He's fine. He's talking. He'd get his adjustment, and he'd be talking, and I'm just like, it just makes you want to punch him. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so he went from, talking better, talking more like, a normal teenager. He's sleeping better. He used to have I would get woken up 2 or 3 times a night by him. I felt like we'd gone back to infanthood. Mama can't sleep. He's not done that in months. He does not stutter anymore. I can't even remember the last time that he stuttered. There will be times that he will ask, when am I going in to see Josh? And I'm like, oh, well, it's now we've got the standing appointment. Because we tried doing that every other week. That didn't work. So we go in every week, and sometimes we go in twice a week, and he can tell a difference because he will say something like, if we've been on vacation or something, he goes, did you schedule an appointment for when we get back? Yes. He knows the difference. And thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Trudy. I'm going to now introduce Leah. Leah was originally seeking care for her daughter who was struggling with digestion issues as well as constipation. And then her teenage son started seeing us consistently due to mental health challenges, and Leah herself also sees us. And here is their story.
Good evening. So bizarre. 2 years ago, I started hearing some radio ads about this person, Dr. Josh on Be Well, that said that he was working with digestive issues in kids if they had a hard time pooping. I love talking about poop. It's amazing. And we were struggling with our daughter, who could go for several days, sometimes even a full week, without having a bowel movement. So I was like, well, let's just give this a shot and see what happens. She was 5 at the time. Took her in for her first appointment, and instantly we made it home, and she was right into the bathroom. And I was like, what is this? This is amazing. But to rewind a bit with her, because there's always a history with any kind of problems that we have, and this is partly why we seek out chiropractic care. She was a planned horrendous pregnancy. I was sick for the full 9 months. I lived off of Coke and chicken sandwiches from McDonald's. She came into this world ready to be born at 2 a.m. and decided to not be born at the birthing center. She wanted us to drive ourselves to the hospital from the birthing center the following, I don't even know. It was the following day. It was ridiculous. And she would not come out. And I was scared. I did a lot of yelling. My husband was insanely patient with me. When she finally did pop out, she was flat-backed. She would not turn on her side. And if anyone knows about the birthing process, babies are supposed to turn onto their side and slide out sideways, because that's kind of how we're built. And she was flat on her back and slid out and was 9 pounds, 3 ounces. A lover. I considered myself a pretty okay mom. I knew what to expect with an infant because I'd had 2 other children. It seems sometimes like it didn't matter what we did. She was unhappy. She was cranky. By day 3, I could not feed her. My goal, she was going to be my last baby because I was turning 40 and I was having no more children. I refused to have children after I was 40. She refused to eat. She wouldn't eat on one side. I could hold her on the other side and she would be completely fine. She would not take a bottle. There were just a lot of things. She couldn't sleep for more than an hour, possibly. She woke up all the time during the night, crying. And if we held her, then she was totally fine. And I thought, great, I have a co-sleeper. I don't want to have a co-sleeper. I want to be able to sleep in my own bed without somebody next to me that's tiny and little and all of those things. My lactation consultant recommended that I take her to a chiropractor. Unfortunately, Dr. Josh was not open at that time because he hadn't started his practice, I believe. So I took her to a friend of mine, and she started to do some manipulations and adjustments on her. Lined her right back up, and she instantly was able to start feeding on both sides, was sleeping longer through the night and having great regular bowel movements. That lasted for a few months, and then just life happened, and we had to kind of stop. So roll forward again 5 years, 6 years, and I'm signing her up to take her to go see Dr. Josh. Her sleep improved immensely. She is our kid who would get up several times during the night, and by the age of 4, I thought to myself, why did we choose to have a child? Like I miss my sleep. Like I was cranky all the time because I could not sleep. My husband is never cranky. If he is, he never shows it. He's this perfectly gentle, beautiful giant. But it was wearing us down. Like she was wearing us down. Our pediatrician was saying, do these things to help. Once we started chiropractic care, the sleeping improved. The digestion improved. Not to say that it's 100% perfect because we as parents don't always do the dietary needs that she needs. And so we have to find that balance. But it is a guarantee that when she goes to see Dr. Josh, we are always guaranteed a smooth sailing in the bathroom, if not an hour after we get home, but definitely by the next day. And she is a much happier, more energetic child because of that. And for us, that's a saving grace. So we went to have one of her scans done. And I wish I could remember exactly what Dr. Josh had said to us, because it was an instant of Chad and I looked at each other and we were like, Dawson needs this. This is what Dawson needs. My son just turned 18 in September. He was a beautiful baby, a beautiful pregnancy, a beautiful toddler, a beautiful elementary school kid. He turned 12 and something drastically happened and changed in him. He was not my happy-go-lucky, wake up in the morning smiling kid anymore. He was still very kind. I still don't know. We will never know what was the cause. When my son was born, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, instantly went into labor. My water broke. He was born at 5:20. We had enough time to drive from Peters Creek into Anchorage. I had a natural, beautiful water birth. He was 7 pounds, 8 ounces. The happiest baby. He slept through the night. There was like maybe on one hand, I could count how many times he woke up in the middle of the night his first year and a half. He was perfect. I joked that if he was my first child, I probably would have had like 18 more kids. But he literally was. He was happy. He went to anybody. He would walk up to strangers in the store. I called him my milk carton baby. I was like, he's going to be my child that I'm going to have put a picture of on a milk carton, because he just would go to anyone. Everyone loved him. As he got a little bit older, I noticed he wasn't crawling. He was army crawling. Fortunately, I work in elementary education, so I knew that early childhood development and the milestones and things that were supposed to happen. He was not talking. He wasn't even saying basic mama, dada, those kinds of things. When he finally did start to walk, because I forced him to walk, he was about 19 months old. I reached out to a local group and said, I need some help with my child because I'm not sure what's going on with him. I know what is happening is not normal. They did a lot of in-home interventions with him. They worked on him with speech because everything to him was more. He could say the word more. He'd go to the fridge and hit the fridge and say more. And I'd open the fridge and I'd say, do you want water? Do you want fruit? More. That's all he would say. It was very hard to navigate him. We tried picture cards. He'd point to picture cards. Everything was more. I'm like, what is wrong with him? I finally went and got him diagnosed. He did have autism. And I say he did have it. We all know that we all have a little piece of autism in us. It's just how we function. The autism scale is huge. He was diagnosed at a super low scale of a 7, which had its pros and its cons because Trudy was like, I was fearful. I was like, oh my gosh, what does this mean for us? How's he going to function? Like all these kinds of things started going through my mind. I got him into a special education preschool with the school district. He went there for 3 years before he started kindergarten. When he started kindergarten, he still wasn't really talking. There was speech involvement. There was all kinds of learning disabilities. He was cognitively slow. It takes him a really long time. We roll forward, but he's happy. He's kind. He's helpful. He has younger siblings from his dad's side. I never worried about leaving him home alone. I never, he's a beautiful, beautiful child. And then we roll into he's 12 years old, and then he does a flip of a 180. And I'm like, I don't know where my child has gone. What has happened? And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Welcome to the teenage years. Okay. But I don't know where my happy, wake up every morning with a big smile on my face kid went. It was wake up in the morning and it literally was living with a caveman. It was very frustrating. And I didn't know how to navigate that. Had no clue. When he was 14, 15 years old, he was in high school. I got a phone call from the school when I was at work letting me know that I needed to come to the school because they had him in the office with them because he had told a friend that he wanted to kill himself and that he had almost killed himself the night before. Now, he was a very quiet child, didn't really talk a whole lot. Tried to have conversations with him and he wouldn't say anything. He'd just kind of look at you and be like, whatever, very sullen. My world was rocked that day simply because the year before, almost exactly to the day, I had a friend of mine whose son had committed suicide. He had just turned 18 years old. And watching their family try to navigate that destroyed them. We showed up, we had our conversation, we had to take him to an intake. We were just trying to figure out what do you do with your child when they want to end their life? As a parent, right now in my life experiences, I don't know what could be possibly worse than that. I stayed home for 3 days with him. I was like, do I lock up the knives? Do I, all of our guns and things are empty and taken away. I was afraid for him to go to bed at night. Because I was afraid that I would wake up the next morning and he wouldn't be awake. And when we had taken Ren to see Dr. Josh, and he talked about how chiropractic care can help the mental status of people and how the neurons are connected to the nerves and the spine, and it's all intertwined together, we instantly were like, we have to get him and see what this is all about, if this is going to work. Our child, went from a very sullen, sulky kid to more smiles, outgoing. He started a little over a year ago seeing Dr. Josh. He's much happier now. It's not 100% perfect cure. We do have him on some antipsychotic medication simply for the fact that he needs a little bit of assistance with that because he has a big history of genetic things from his father's side, just from in utero as he was developing, and then the first 2.5 years of his life, which was not a very stable environment. And when Dr. Josh talks about being the hope dealer, and at first I was like, oh yeah, what kind of deal are you doing? What kind of hope are you giving out? I can truly say now, it's one of those things where he took a family who was pretty much in a lockdown and afraid to leave their child alone because they weren't sure what they were going to come home to now I have full confidence. Tonight he's at home with his little sister who's sick. He has a friend over. He went and got picked up from school today by Chad. He opened the door. He was happy. He was smiling. He has conversations with us. It went from not sure how to express his feelings or his words to now he opens up to us. He communicates with us. Like Trudy said, her son just all of a sudden just says a full sentence. And we're like, what is happening to him? Because it's the constant care that he is getting. And aside from the medical side of it, I don't know of anyone else in the community who would be a more positive adult role model on the medical side. As soon as he walks in that door, we call them the girls. The girls are always so happy and positive and joking with him and asking about school or about a girlfriend or about like what happened. Dr. Josh has this thing where he always says, like, tell me something good that happened. Like, what's something good? For the first couple of weeks, he wouldn't say anything. He's like, well, I don't know. Now it's pretty much a, hey, I know what I'm going to tell Dr. Josh today when he asks me what's good. It's huge. It's huge. He's made this connection with their office that goes beyond just showing up to get adjusted. He takes it literally into his heart. And the same thing, he'll ask if I don't write down when the appointments are on the calendar, he will ask me, do I have an adjustment this week? It's almost like he's excited to go. He's excited to see everybody. So we have noticed that we've gone from this, like I said, this very sullen, lonely child to somebody who literally his life has been saved because of the chiropractic care. Dr. Josh has lots of great things he's probably going to talk about later, just explain how all of that works. But I'm here to say that I have two children who are completely different with completely different reasons as to why they went. And it's working. It's working for them. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, he's my hope dealer because he delivered the hope, and it's working. So thank you for that.
I don't know that I really need to do my presentation because they pretty much did it for me. Talked about the nervous system, how well it controls the body, and just the impact it can make in your lives. But I do need to share a little bit more, especially because this is really why I do what I do and why I love to see kids and families for my son here. My wife, Billy Joe, is back there. We have 3 beautiful kiddos, but we're going to talk about Dane tonight. You know, you're in Alaska, right? It's summertime. You always got to go out and enjoy the summer, right? Whether you're 20 weeks pregnant or not, you know, like you don't really feel, you know, maybe not too much. And you're in Alaska, let's go for a little 4-wheeler ride, right? So that's what we did. We went out with a big group of people, went on a 4-wheeler ride. And, you know, like you do, you're kind of following each other around. You go around the corner, you kind of stop, kind of look back and wait for them to come. We did that a few times, and I look back, and she's not there. So I'm like, okay, wait a couple seconds. A couple more seconds. I'm like, I don't see her still. So turn around, head back, and that's when I see she's tipped over the 4-wheeler with the handlebars right in her stomach. She's screaming, my baby, my baby. I'm like, holy shit, excuse my language, running over there. Like, this is nuts. Like, go over there, try to help pull that off, pull the 4-wheeler off. She's screaming. We get her in a side-by-side and took her down. They had a little emergency team down there waiting, and they were trying to find the heartbeat, check in, couldn't find the heartbeat. They're like, oh my gosh, like we need to rush to the hospital right now down in Matsu. We get down there, and they got a little more high tech, you know, equipment. They ended up finding the heartbeat. Like, oh my goodness, so thankful. Well, what that did, as you guys already know, throughout pregnancy, you know, a stressed pregnancy can grow a stressed baby. And so she was on bed rest pretty much from 20 weeks on, like the whole second half of her pregnancy. That went okay as best as it could, right? You know, super stressful. But he ended up joining us, had an awesome water birth, you know, kind of similar, like he was a great kid. But as he got a little older, getting to that potty training kind of age, you know, like he wanted to, like 12, 15 months, like, yeah, let's do it. Kind of doing his own for a minute. Like, no, maybe not. Kind of kept backing off. Well, it's really, really hard to potty train especially number 2, right? Pooping. Talking about that tonight. When you pretty much have diarrhea every single bowel movement, 6 times a day, multiple times throughout the day. How the heck are you going to potty train a kid? Like, he can't control it, can't feel it. His brain is not communicating properly to his body. And so we went and got some tests, got some pediatric doctors. We did a colonoscopy, we did an endoscopy. Like 2 years old, 2.5 years old. That's a lot for a little kid. You got to put him under anesthesia for that. Like, that's big time. Like, that's just not good stuff anyways for anybody, let alone for, a little 2-year-old. I'm sure many of you have heard from any other practitioners, whatever it is, colic, fussy, potty training, they'll grow out of it, right? Anybody heard that before? Yeah. Well, that's BS. They don't grow out of it. What they do is they grow into something else, and we'll get more into that later. And so that just really got us upset. It's like, that's all we keep hearing is going to grow out of it. And so fast forward into going into chiropractic school, I really kind of want to be like most chiropractors that most of us probably know, right? Back pain, headaches, sports, things like that, which is awesome. I saw a chiropractor, growing up through sports too. But when we walked into this class that was a pediatric chiropractor, it was on peds that day, they're like, hey, if you guys got a kiddo, bring him in. We'll just, we always use our kids for, tests, right? But so me and my wife, we brought him in the classroom, and the first thing the doc said is like, that kid either never eats or he poops way too much. He had no idea who we were. We just walked in with some students, pretty new parents, first-time parents. We're like, what the heck is he talking about? How does he know? Like, just looking at him, he just knows. And we're like, holy crap! Like, that's amazing. So pretty much right after that class, we found a local chiropractor down there by my school that saw kids, and we got him started right away. It literally took like 4 adjustments, and he had his first solid poop in like 3.5 years. Like, can you imagine going through that? I'm sure some of you can. Maybe some of you have dealt with that before. Like, that's a long time not to have solid poop. And so fast forward, that's really one of the big reasons why I do what I do, and I want to see kids, I want to help them thrive, and why it's so important to get them checked really as soon as possible. And then, he's kicking butt. This is him here. Obviously, you probably picked that up. And so there he is now. He's 11 years old. Judo, guitar, doing all these things, just excelling and doing awesome in life. So that is my kind of why right there. A lot of you guys know kind of these 3 options that we have here. So traditional medicine, many of you have gone that route already. That's kind of the medication and just kind of going that route. And then functional medicine is really, kind of up and coming. People are pushing more towards that, not going right to the medications right away, right? Then you have us, neurological chiropractors, where we use technology to help measure the body and the nervous system. We really look from the inside out, because that's where everything stems from. And so we have that different kind of inside out approach. Most of you filled out surveys to come here. 65% of you said you had some kind of stress pregnancy. Intervention, we're going to talk more about that later, but 76% said they had some sort of intervention during the delivery process. And then a diagnosis, 62%. Those of you that know us, and we have a nice little quote on our wall that sometimes we need diagnosis, I get that, but we really try to stem away from that in our office. We don't like to give labels. No matter how young you are, if you keep getting told over and over that you are this or that, you end up believing it, right? Whether good or bad, right? And then medication's only 34%, which is kind of surprising actually, which is really awesome. It's probably why you're all here, right? Many of you don't really want to go that route. So we got a little video I want you to watch and just kind of listen to what it says here.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
So that's kind of what we go by in our office. It's really hard to see something if you're not looking for it, right? A couple of you have probably seen this before, but I know many of you have gone to a lot of different doctors. They're always asking you all these questions, but maybe they're asking some of the wrong question, maybe not the right questions. This is what we call our perfect storm funnel. It starts at the top there, that prenatal stress. So, right, pregnancy. Almost everybody that comes in our office had some sort of stress during the pregnancy, whether that's physical, emotional, and then that goes down to the birth intervention. We just talked about some of the stats just with you guys here tonight. Any kind of intervention from epidural, C-section, forceps, manual extraction, all of those are an added physical stress to the nervous system and to the baby. There's obviously time and place for all of this, but most of the time there's not. And so when you have those first two in that funnel, you move down to that stressed, colicky baby, right? You can never soothe them. They're never calm. They're always just fussy, don't sleep. And then you right, the sensory, sick all the time. My son, when he was in first grade, that was one of the compliments we got from his teachers, like, man, Dane never gets sick. Or when he does, he's sick and he gets over it. Anybody have kids in public school know 2 weeks maybe, then boom, you're getting sick again. It just goes. When your immune system's working the way it's supposed to, you get sick and you get over it. Getting sick is a good thing. You want to get sick so you build up that immunity. Then you go into the older child, that sensory spectrum, emotional, kind of just stuck in that fight or flight, stuck in that storm, kind of just really getting into that. Then what do we get? Teenagers, right? Now you're depressed, anxious, want to be alone. What does that do when you become an adult? It doesn't change. You're just kind of growing into that. Now you're just angry, upset, depressed, right? How many kids are on depression medications, let alone adults these days? Way too many, in my opinion. So this is the we call the hierarchy of health and healing. It's kind of 3 steps. So you have your autonomic nervous system first. That's pretty much all the functions in your body that you don't have to think about. Breathing, heart, lungs, digestion. Then you have your motor system, which is second, and then that gut immune, which a lot of people like to go to the gut immune system these days. It's getting a little more popular, but the gut or immune system doesn't get wrecked or messed up until the nervous system does first. Nervous system is always first because it controls everything, every part of your body. So this is what we call a gas first brake, right? Thoughts, that's your emotional, your work, your family, your health, those type of stressors that we have, and we all have those. Toxins, that's anything we're putting into our body. So diet's big with that, medications, air, water, vaccinations, all of that is a toxin to our nervous system. Trauma, so physical stress, right? So that starts from that birth process. We already talked about the interventions and all that, but it goes into milestones, right? Little toddlers walking, falling. The first couple years, right, we all know is one of the most important developmentally for our child. And so we are seeing kids that are on this ADHD, autism spectrum, all of that, they're maxed out into the 8, 9, 10 area. So that means they're stuck in that fight or flight. Fight or flight's a stress response, which we all should have. We should have a good response. But we should also be able to back off of that and get back into that calming, healing state, which is what we call the parasympathetic, or the vagus nerve we're going to talk about. It's a calming part of the nervous system. And so that's over in that 1, 2, 3 area. And most of these kiddos are kind of stuck in that 6, 7, and it just takes a little thing and they just go off the edge. Temper tantrums, or they're just going to go to the room and be gone and don't want to see anybody. Whatever that is for these kiddos, they're just kind of teetering right there, and they're just waiting for that next big thing, or little thing really, just to kind of push them over that edge. We all have, right, moose, bear, animals, right? So when you walk outside, you should have a good physiological response to that when you see them, right? You're going to fight or you're going to run, depending on what kind of bear it is. You should be able to do that and then get back to your normal state, get back to the calm, blood pressure, right? Heartbeat, all of that should be decreased and back to the normal healing state. So I mentioned this already. This is what we call the wandering nerve. This is the vagus nerve. This is the main autonomic nerve that we mentioned. And these are all the things that you don't have to think about. Breathing, heart, lungs, asthma. A lot of kiddos these days have asthma. They go along with some of these diagnoses that we have. Heart, blood pressure, stomach, digestion, bowels is really the big one. Almost every kiddo and adult has some kind of digestive kind of issue going on. Because when we're in that fight or flight, our body doesn't care about the last meal we ate. So that's why we continue to have these digestive issues. When we're stuck there, it just doesn't care. It's not worried about it. We talked about the autonomic nervous system, and then what was second? Motor. So motor is super, super important. I'm not sure if anybody has seen the latest CDC talking about how crawling shouldn't be considered a milestone. Definitely should be. And this is part of the reason why, right here. This guy, he was 17 months old, and he had a couple older siblings, and mom was worried that he wasn't walking yet because all the other kids walked. There's definitely some age, there's a little bit of play area there, but older siblings are running around walking, and he's not quite there yet. Mom was a little concerned, so she brought him in, and this is what we got. Anybody seen anybody scooting like that before? Super important to go to the crawling state before you go to the walking. And so what we did is got him under some care and got his nervous system really communicating clearly his brain to the rest of his body. And this was a couple months. We just had to do some adjustments and do some retraining on getting him to learn how to crawl because he wasn't. Super cute, and we all laugh, right, when you kind of see that, but it's a neurological issue that's going to affect his milestones later. So more about the motor, right? Altered perception. So when our body's not perceiving our environment correctly, it's not going to function properly. And so we talked about the nervous system first. Well, in the neuro kind of motor system, because every system is linked to the nervous system and the neurology, when it's altered, everything else kind of goes. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment and coordinate the behavior of all other cells. Most of you probably picked out the behavior part of that, right? A lot of us are here because of some type of behavior. But when they're not perceiving the environment properly, how are they supposed to give out good information? So garbage in, garbage out kind of idea. The bad behavior that they have is normal when they're getting bad input. So if they're not getting that good information, it's normal for them to have bad behaviors because they're not getting that good information. So this is from Harvard. The interaction of genes, especially early childhood experiences, shape the developing brain. So that's from in the womb on. That's why the moonwalking bear is so important, and we're going to get a little more into that here in just a minute. But cognitive, emotional, and behavior and social capacities are intricately intertwined throughout the life's course. And so when you alter brain function, you're going to alter everything. And subluxation, which is kind of our term for stress stuck on and not a good, clear communication going to the rest of the body, weakens the neurological function of the developing brain, which can lead to lifelong problems in learning, behavior, and physical and mental health. So when subluxation alters perception, it alters function, and it's going to also alter all the other developing systems. So this here, you're probably familiar with that on the left, breaker box. And then we have this. This is in your folder if you guys haven't looked through that. But they're super similar because when a breaker pops, why does it pop? Because it has too much energy, something's wrong. So it pops so it doesn't cause more damage, right? That's what our symptoms and functions are of our body. So when something's not functioning, right, or we have any kind of symptom, pain, that's a sign that that breaker popped and we need to get it checked and we need to fix it. It's not saying the breaker is a problem, right? Because we can go over there, pop the breaker, and then it just pops again. Something's going on inside that's popping that breaker and really making that body not function right. So you can see different areas of the body or the spine, nerves come out and they go to certain areas of the body. And so the low back, right, that's bowel, bladder, reproductive, circulation, upper back areas, heart and lungs. So we might see stress on our scans that show in those areas, and they might correlate with a symptom or pain or dysfunction that somebody has. So again, subluxation, stress on. Stress is just stuck on your pegged, you're floored over to that 9, 8, 9, 10 area, and you can't calm down. You're not going to sleep well. You're just go, go, go. Here's another quick video I want to show.
Some kids are really bouncy and can't sit still. Some kids aren't very coordinated. Some see food as a pile of toxic goo that hurts their mouth and jangles their taste buds. School might be a mysterious place where things don't make much sense. If this sounds like you, you may have sensory processing disorder, and we're going to explain it here. Your body has 7 senses: vision in your eyes, hearing in your ears, touch in your skin, taste in your mouth, and smell in your nose. And you have 2 movement senses, your muscles and your sense of balance. In sensory processing disorder, these senses don't communicate right with your brain. Think of the nerves connecting your brain and senses as a set of roads. Those roads should be smooth superhighways so that the senses and brain can communicate fast. If you have sensory processing disorder, then some of your roads are bumpy and rough. You can also think of the senses as having a broken volume control. If the volume is too high, you will feel your senses too strongly. If the volume is too low, you won't feel sensation at all. In fact, you'll want more. Some kids overcome these problems as they grow older. Others need help.
Anybody know anybody that has any of that? Yeah. And so we're going to kind of talk about in this 5D sequence here. The first D is dyskinesia. That's all about coordination, right? We're talking about milestones and crawling and all of that. Sports, being toddlers, movement. That's that first D. Disaffrontation, we just kind of talked about that. So it's that abnormal sensory input, just like we watched in that video. Super, super dangerous if kids don't know what too much is, whether that's heat, temperature, they can get burned. Just eating. Why do we have a lot of overweight kids? They don't have that sensation. Lots. Too loud. Then dysautonomia. We touched on that. So that's an imbalance of that autonomic nervous system. So all of those other systems that we don't think about aren't going to work properly. And then dysfunction. So this is just by the time we get to that point, all of our other systems are going to start having issues and problems. And then dyskinesis is that abnormal energy output. So we need good information coming in so we can give good behaviors, good attitudes coming out. So this here is a chart of watching cesareans as they continually rise, right? We talked about interventions during the birth process. And so this has been constantly kind of just going up and up. And really the biggest thing is a lot of this isn't always done in an emergency. Some of it's scheduled for whoever's scheduled, right? Even for the family or for the doctor, just to get scheduled. But now that we know more about what this can do and how it affects our nervous system and our children, we just need to be more cautious and kind of look into that more and think about kind of what the outcome is and really look for that moonwalking bear. Again, I got another little quick, this one's a little short video, but this is really what we're talking about when we ask the right questions and we're looking at it in a different way than really anybody else is looking.
Irritated. Oh, there you go, fella.
Come on, buddy.
All right. Ears of a girl. Ears of a girl. Make it cute for the camera.
Oh, man.
There you go.
Make anybody else sick? I hate watching that every time. Didn't seem like it was an emergency to me, the way they're talking and joking and doing their thing, right? I don't know the situation, but if you were to do that to the baby's head 5 minutes later after the baby was born, they'd probably call child services on you. Like, that's pretty intense. And so right where those fingers are at the base of the neck, that's right where that vagus nerve comes out. What does the vagus nerve do? Controls the whole calming part of your body, your nervous system. That's not every kiddo that comes in, but that's a lot. And just going through the birth process can be stressful on mom, baby, whether they had any of this or not. But this is really what we're looking at and asking those type of questions. Dysautonomia. So this is, the brain, right? It starts from the bottom up and the back forward. And so, a little sciencey here is the amygdala part of the brain. That's a lot of your emotions, right? And so anxiety and fear. And so it's going to kind of remember those. It's going to remember any of those emotions, good or bad. So we want to feel those with more good emotions. Hippocampus moves up a little bit. So that's where your memory, right? So you want memory of good emotions and just good memories, because as we're starting, our brain is developing, that's where it starts. That's kind of the base of that. And the prefrontal cortex, so that's where all your main cognitive functions happen, a big part of your brain. That's, your attention, things like that. The most executive kind of part of your brain. Right here in this light blue, this is right where the brainstem is. So this is right where that vagus nerve is. That's right where they're putting their hands in most of these cases. Somatic dysfunction. So this is a study that some osteopaths did that do similar work to what we do. We just look a little more into the nervous system and how it functions. But they found out that 99 out of 100 infants that were born had some sort of subluxation. That's a huge reason why we see kids, and we like to see babies as soon as they're born, as soon as mom and baby are good enough to come in. So we can check the baby so they can get the best start to life as possible, because we know 99 out of 100 are going to have some sort of subluxation or pattern. Back to that gas versus brake. So this is kind of that perfect storm algorithm. Really, we have those 3 T's, right? Thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Well, this is kind of how much of that, how many T's do we have? We kind of see how many of those T's or stressors there are, and then we look at how long. Has it been throughout the whole pregnancy, after the birth, kind of that time frame? We kind of put those together, and then we kind of figure out a care plan to really restore that neurological balance. So again, vagus nerve, right? Autonomic nervous system, the calming, the brake pedal. It goes to all those major functions of the body that you don't have to think about. If you can imagine just that system being wrecked, right? If it was just kind of cut off, not working at all like it's supposed to. That's where you get developmental diaskesis. So that's, it leads to cognition and behavior, tantrums, those sort of things. And diaskesis literally means shocked throughout. So you imagine that vagus nerve is just really shocked throughout from the birth process. There's no wonder we see so many kiddos with kind of these ADHDs and focus and sensory type of things. Now we got through all the science stuff, kind of our technology and what we do at our office. It really gives us a good look at what's going on from the inside out. No, these aren't like x-rays or anything like that. These are neurosensory scans, and they just read what your body's putting off. So this is our heart rate variability. It's checking heart rate, it's checking pulse, the temperature. It's looking in between your heartbeat for these variations, and it puts you up on, plots you on this chart here. So you can see that white dot. That was the newborn with the manual extraction. You might be able to guess by looking at it, we want to be in the green. Newborns, I expect them to be in the green. Some of us older guys, maybe not so much starting out just because we had many of years of stress built up. This is a newborn. Pregnancy, the delivery is stressful, but I expect them to be in the green if it's a good birth. And this one's way out in that red. A lot of stress, not able to adapt to stress very well. So this is our surface EMG. So this is checking muscle tone down the spine. And so again, when we're stuck in fight or flight or that stress mode, our body tenses and tighten up. You ever go up to somebody and just kind of rub their shoulders or whatever it is, you're like, man, relax. They're like, I am. No, that's this right here. That's stress, thoughts, traumas, toxins built up, and they can't just calm down. They think they are. Believe me, I see it every day. Doing my adjustments, like, okay, just relax, take a breath. They're like, no, I am. I'm like, okay. We got some work to do. If you look at this here, it's measuring tone and energy throughout those muscles. It should be in a certain range. If not, we know that it's really high, and we need to work on that calming part of the nervous system. So we want all those bars to be white. You got green, blue, red, and then black is extreme. So this is 10-year-old just behavior and focus issues. This here is what our thermal. So we roll this up your spine, and it's checking temperature along your spine. It should be within a certain degree of other sides. This really looks deep down into organ function and just maybe some that have been kind of down real deep that we've had going on for a while. This is a 7-year-old with autism. Different reading on the chart, but the colors mean the same. So again, we want that to be all white. You can see the red significant all the way up in the upper back neck area, and then also in that low back area, which is both of those kind of work together as that parasympathetic, calming, healing part of the nervous system. So perfect storm, like I mentioned earlier, we don't like to label kiddos, but we got categories to kind of give descriptions of behaviors. So the one on the left, and those are examples of some scans of what they might look like. We have named drunken bull, so that's your ADD, your SBD, more of that kind of subdued, kind of just maybe a little more chill, kind of want to be alone by themselves, that type of behavior. Then we have the raging bull, right? So it's all red, all lit up. That's that ADHD, anxiety, ODD, OCD, those type of behaviors. And then really most of what we see is kind of a combination of both. They go from one to the other. That's really what we see most of. There's normally not a ton that are just one way 100%. But those are the categories of that perfect storm kiddos that we see come in our office. I'm gonna back up a second here. We're gonna have another special guest come up and share real quick before we move on to the end of this.
All right, our last parent story is Melissa. Her son was in due to stomach pains, and her daughter was struggling with anxiety. And here is their story.
You'll have to forgive me, I don't talk in front of crowds very often, but I do think it's important to tell our story. We initially came for our son Trent. His story started pretty much when he was born. He didn't sleep from day one, and while he did have a natural birth, it was a fairly stressful pregnancy, but he never slept. He was our first child, and we didn't know that just wasn't normal. Like, parents love to tell their horror stories, and so we figured, well, this is just our horror story that we get to tell forever about how our child never slept. We would have to bribe our family members to come once or twice a month so that I could get 3 hours stretch of sleep. At 2 years old, I was still getting up 6 times a night and was exhausted. But then about that time, we noticed dietary stuff. After every meal, he would go and he would lay on the tile floor. He'd lift up his shirt and he'd lay on the tile floor where it was cold. And when he started talking, we'd ask him, what are you doing, buddy? And he'd say, my tummy's hot. It's hot, it feels good. And so we thought, okay, well, that's a little strange. And so we decided to get allergy testing. My husband was going in at the same time, so we figured, well, great, we'll do it all at the same time. And he came back with a fairly significant slew of allergies. And so we cut those all out of the diet. We did the elimination diet. And the elimination diet brings you down to the very basic foods and then introduces things back so that you can tell what is actually bothering your stomach. And we couldn't find what was actually bothering him. He was completely gluten-free, nut-free, dairy-free. We were down to the basics, and nothing really helped. Well, we finally reached a point where he was just maintaining. It wasn't ideal, but we were okay. Until he turned about 10. And at that point, he started coming up to us at night when he should be calming down and falling asleep. And he'd come up crying and say that his stomach hurt and he couldn't relax and he couldn't fall asleep. We would, comfort him, we'd give him some Tylenol, and he'd eventually fall back asleep. Well, it just kind of escalated on until this was every single night. He was on daily ibuprofen, Tylenol, all that. And so we took him to a specialist, an enterologist and a pediatric enterologist. And he ran every test that he knew how to run. And every one came back, this child looks great. He should be normal. He went under general anesthesia. They did the scope. They looked at his stomach, his esophagus, his bowels, and they said he should be a poster child for his guts. He's got beautiful innards. But it wasn't an answer. Finally, they just diagnosed him with anxiety-caused IBS, and put him on antidepressants and a slew of other medication, and it didn't help. It didn't help at all. We were still, every single night just holding our 11-year-old son as he cried because he was in so much pain. And that takes a toll on not only him, of course, but our entire family. Our other children, the normal ones, they were still feeling neglected because our oldest was taking all of our attention. And so we decided, okay, well, the medical route didn't work. We're going to go a natural route. So we went and saw a dietitian, a naturopath dietitian, and she did the whole elimination diet, and we did the gut health, and we did all these enzymes and a whole process to kill out the bacteria in the gut and then repollinate it with the good bacteria, and it still was nothing. And she finally threw up her hands and said, I don't know, I can't seem to help you either. How about you go try something for the brain. Maybe he needs like more help than I can give. But out of the blue, we got a call from friends of ours who had moved out of state, and they like asked, how are you guys doing? And so we kind of broke down and explained what a hard time we were having. And they said, well, just a thought out of the blue, our daughter had IBS, and we went to Be Well, and it really seemed to help her. Like, you could give that a try. And we figured, well, we got nothing to lose. Like, we can try anything. And so, and I should touch on, he also still was not sleeping. He is a numbers kid. He always did well in school and math, and he loves stats and can tell you all the things. And so we got him a Fitbit, and he wears it religiously, and he would always tell us his stats. Well, his sleep score, he informed us that of a kid of his age, he was supposed to be scoring about an 80 every night. And he was, on a nightly basis, doing 50s and 60s. And so we started with Be Well, and within 2 appointments, he was at 80. He was sleeping through the night. We went from daily pain medication and, after every meal, to maybe once a week. And he hardly ever comes up. And even then, he's not crying. He's not panicked. He's not in pain. He's just uncomfortable, and he wants us to know about it. And it went from daily to maybe once a week. And just the relief that gave us as parents, you can't even imagine. Like I said, he always did academically very well in school, but we would get regular calls from his teachers saying, like, he broke down in class again today. Like, somebody said something and it hurt his feelings, and he burst out into tears, which is also very hard on, a 10, 11-year-old boy, where his friends are all tough and grown up, and, he can't hold his emotions. We have not got a single call this year since starting. And so the relief for our family is just astronomical. And so then we thought, well, we've got this kid sorted out. Our daughter was starting to have night terrors. She was always a great sleeper, like no problems, until she turned about 10. And then she couldn't calm down. She would like hyperventilate and just rev herself up, and she wouldn't fall asleep until 3 or 4 in the morning. And then the next day is poor, and so on and so forth. And so we thought, well, hey, it worked for this one, we'll try the next one. And since starting, she went from at least once a week panic attacks to, in the past, I think, 2 months that she's been going, she's only had 2. And the sleep is hugely improved. And she is happier, and she's actually getting better grades in school. And she's made friends where she's always had a hard time making friends. And so I just have to say thank you, because it's nothing we would have thought of chiropractic care. Like, we did everything we thought we knew how to do, and I'm at a loss for words. If it wasn't for a single phone call, like, we would still be like lost. And so, yeah, I just want to say thank you guys.
We really, why I do what we do is because I don't want to be somebody's last chance, last hope. We're trying to get out there, so we're first. We're getting down to the closing here, guys. Really want to talk about some action steps and what you can do. Obviously, coming here tonight, you're, doing what most parents do. You're always looking, trying to find the answer, not giving up on they'll grow out of it, right? And so keep on doing that. And the big thing is reduce those 3 T's, as much as you can. Our kiddos pick up on our stress more than you know, all the way from an infant on up. We're all connected, and they can definitely pick up on our stressors. So trying to decrease that stress the best you can, which is why we see families and why all families come in, right? Because when parents are functioning properly, they can handle the stress of their kiddos, and then we get the kiddos under, and everybody's, a big, happy, stressless family. We all have stress. Schedule a scan. The biggest thing is we want to get the scan so you at least know. We do the consultation. We're going to dive deep into the history, kind of what's going on, some of your goals, what you want for your child or you, and then we're going to have you come back the next day after we do the scans. We're going to tell you what it means, answer any questions you have. You guys have seen kind of examples of those scans. I got a bunch of questions. We would talk about what that means, and we're going to relate it to your child and your health goals, and we're going to put together a care plan. Whatever that is for your kiddo, we're going to design a plan specifically for them. So like I said, we're dive deep, neurosensory scans, and that reported finding. Tonight, we really just want you guys to be able to have the opportunity to get those scans done. And so consultation, the scans, report, in that second day where we go over that care plan. We're doing that for $50 tonight, only for coming out. Normally $196. Like I said, you just get the scans done, and once we go over it, you decide what you want to do with that, right? You start care, or you can continue on, whatever you want to do. It's totally up to you. My job is just to let you know and give you that information so you can make that choice. But before you get up and get scheduled, I'm going to go over some frequently asked questions that we get. How long does it take, right? We all want to get better yesterday or see results now. We talked about those 3 T's, and so, right, it all depends. It depends on how many of those stressors you have and for how long. Our average care plan, when we see these kiddos, kind of this perfect storm, is around 48 adjustments over a certain period of time. Just kind of depends. That's kind of our average. How you get my sensory spectrum kiddo to sit still, like you're dragging them in, they don't want to come see another doctor, right? And it's really hard for some. But we have plenty of tools that we can get them adjusted. Different techniques, different styles, these awesome lights that we have that you got to come in to see. We got a lot of different opportunities, different ways to get them adjusted. This is one of the big ones. Do you take my insurance? What we do is we take HSA, flex savings accounts. We don't bill directly in our office. So we print a super bill for you. You can submit it. We see a lot of success with that, or like I said, flex or HSA accounts. You might have seen kind of our name down here in the PX docs. You've seen it a few times. So this is part of a pediatric chiropractic group that I'm part of. I know we already kind of asked earlier if you know somebody that should probably be here tonight that maybe couldn't make it. And then we also get questions for other friends out of state. So we're part of a network. And so if any of you are interested in that, let me know. We can get you connected and find another doc that does similar work to what I do in my office. And that's going to be it for tonight. Again, thank you all for coming. Hope you guys learned something. And I'll be hanging out right here to answer questions for you. So, thank you.